I sat in my old Ford pickup, engine off, hands gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles ached. The street was quiet, just a line of modest townhouses with lights glowing behind their thin curtains. I stared at the one with the blue door, Vince's place. I had driven by twice already, each time telling myself I was overreacting, but I knew I wasn't. Elena's lie had been too obvious. She said she was going to her friend Marcy's house. Except Marcy posted photos this morning from Chicago, sitting with her sister at a Cubs game. When I asked Elena about it, she got defensive, muttering something about plans changing last minute. That's when I knew. My stomach churned. I felt like I'd swallowed a block of concrete. For weeks I'd noticed little things. Elena coming home late, her phone glued to her hand, that distant look in her eyes when I asked about her day. I told myself I was imagining it. Now I was sitting here, watching a door I had no business watching, waiting to catch my wife in the act. I checked the time, 9:17 p.m. She'd been here for nearly an hour. My jaw clenched as I thought about Vince, that slick guy from her office, always flashing his expensive watch, always laughing a little too loud at things Elena said. I hated him the second I met him. My phone buzzed. A text from Elena, "Just heading home soon, don't wait up." I almost threw the phone out the window. Instead, I called her. "Hey," she answered, her tone light but guarded. "Hey, babe. Just wrapping up some paperwork at the site," I said, forcing my voice calm. "I'll be home in about 20. There was a pause, then a faint shuffle in the background. "Oh, okay. Drive safe." I hung up, my chest pounding like I'd just run a mile. A couple of minutes later, the blue door opened. Elena stepped out, brushing her hair back with shaky fingers. She looked disheveled, her blouse wrinkled, lipstick smudged. And then Vince walked out behind her. He was grinning that smug grin I'd seen at the office holiday party, the one that made me want to break something. He leaned against the doorframe like he owned the world, and when Elena turned to say goodbye, he reached out and touched her arm. Too familiar, too easy. I didn't even breathe. She walked to her car, the same car I'd helped her pick out last year, and drove off, not noticing my truck parked half a block away. I stayed put, watching Vince close the door, my thoughts a mess of anger and disbelief. The betrayal burned, but strangely, I felt calm, like a storm had blown through and left only the quiet. I wasn't guessing anymore. I knew. As I started the engine and followed the road back home, one thought settled in my mind like steel. This wasn't over. I pulled into our driveway just as Elena's car rolled in. My hands were still shaking on the wheel. I could feel the cold steel of the tire iron lying across the passenger seat, a tool I grabbed from the truck bed without even thinking. I wasn't planning on swinging it, but I needed something to hold, something that gave me control when my whole life felt like it was collapsing. Elena stepped out of her car, startled to see me sitting there with the headlights on. Her face went pale, like she'd been caught stealing. "Mark, what are you doing home so early?" she asked, adjusting her blouse as if that would erase what I'd just seen. "Funny question," I said, stepping out slowly, tire iron hanging from my hand. "I could ask you the same thing." Before she could answer, Vince's silver BMW pulled up behind her. He got out with that smug grin, like this was just another night for him. "Is there a problem here?" he said, strolling toward me with his hands in his pockets, as if he owned the ground we were standing on. My grip tightened. "Yeah, there's a problem," I said, my voice calm but hard. "You've been messing with another man's wife." Vince chuckled. "Relax, man. You're reading this wrong." "Shut up," I snapped, stepping closer. "I'm done reading things wrong." Elena jumped between us, her hands out. "Mark, this isn't what it looks like. We were just talking." I swung the tire iron down hard on the hood of Vince's BMW. The sound rang through the night, metal on metal, leaving a deep dent. Vince flinched, his cocky smile vanishing. "Talking," I growled. "This what talking looks like?" "Hey!" Vince shouted, his voice cracking as he stepped back. "You're crazy!" "Try me," I said, taking one step closer. He didn't move. He wasn't so confident anymore. "Mark, stop!" Elena yelled, her voice trembling. "You're making this worse. God, do you know how boring you've become? All you do is work, eat, and sleep. I needed someone who actually made me feel alive." Her words hit me like a slap. For a moment, I couldn't speak. I just stared at her, this woman I'd built a life with, talking to me like I was some stranger who didn't matter. Vince mumbled something about calling the cops, but I didn't care. I lowered the tire iron slowly, my mind spinning. Whatever I'd thought was left of our marriage had just gone up in flames. Elena slammed the front door so hard, the picture frames on the wall rattled. "What the hell was that, Mark?" she shouted, spinning around to face me. "You just humiliated me in front of half the neighborhood." I dropped the tire iron on the kitchen counter with a dull clang. "Humiliated you? You've been sneaking around behind my back. Don't you dare make me the bad guy here." She folded her arms, her face flushed with anger. "You're paranoid. Vince and I were just talking about work." "Right," I said, my voice low and cutting. "Work at his house at 9 o'clock at night, with your hair messed up and your lipstick smeared?" Her eyes darted away for half a second. "You're overreacting. If you weren't so checked out all the time, maybe I wouldn't have to find someone who actually listens to me." I laughed, but it came out bitter. "Checked out? I work 10 hours a day to keep this roof over our heads. You think that's neglect? You've been lying for weeks, Elena. I have the phone records, the receipts. I've been watching." That stopped her cold. "What are you talking about?" she asked, her voice quieter now. "I know where you've been," I said, stepping closer. "Every time you said you were at Marcy's or stuck late at the office, I tracked it. I've got screenshots, messages you forgot to delete from our shared tablet. I even know about the transfers, the money that's missing from our joint account." Her face paled. "You've been spying on me?" she said, trying to sound outraged, but her voice cracked just enough to betray her fear. "I've been protecting myself," I said flatly. "I've spent months gathering proof, because deep down, I knew this was coming." She tried to recover, crossing her arms tighter. "So what? You think you can just throw me out? You don't have the guts." "Try me," I said, leaning in so close I could see her pupils widen. "This house, the savings, everything, I'm locking it down. If you think you can drain me and run off with him, you're wrong. I'll take this to a lawyer tomorrow." Elena scoffed, but her bravado was cracking. "You wouldn't." "Watch me," I said, pulling my phone from my pocket and showing her a folder of photos. Screenshots of her messages to Vince, GPS logs of her late-night trips, even a bank statement showing money wired to an account I didn't recognize. "One call, Elena. That's all it takes." She opened her mouth, but no words came out. For the first time that night, she looked unsure. I felt something shift inside me, like the power she'd held over me was gone. "This ends now," I said. "You wanted a game, you just lost." I woke up to the sound of my phone buzzing nonstop. At first I thought it was work. Maybe something had gone wrong on the job site. But when I opened my notifications, my chest tightened. There were dozens of messages, all from friends, neighbors, even family. "What the hell is going on between you and Elena?" One message read. "Dude, did you really throw her out in the middle of the night?" Another asked. Confused, I checked Elena's Facebook. My stomach dropped. She'd posted a long, dramatic rant about me, claiming I had violent outbursts and that she'd been living in fear. She even hinted that I had control issues and tried to keep her from seeing friends. It was all lies, but her story was spreading fast. Some people believed her instantly, leaving supportive comments. Others messaged me privately, asking if any of it was true. I sat there at the kitchen table, staring at my phone, feeling like my world had just tilted sideways. She wasn't just cheating, she was trying to destroy me. By noon, I'd had enough. I scrolled through my contacts and found the one person I could trust. "Cal," I said when he answered, my voice tight. "I need you." Cal had been my best friend since high school, the guy who always showed up when things got ugly. I met him that afternoon at an old diner off the highway, the kind of place where the coffee is burnt, but the booths are private. He slid into the seat across from me. "You look like hell, man," he said, glancing at my phone. "I've seen the posts. She's really going for the throat." "She's lying about everything," I muttered. "I need to hit back, but I don't know where to start." Cal leaned back, thinking. "What about that guy, Vince? Something tells me he's not just a random co-worker." "You think he's got dirt?" "I think guys like him always have dirt," Cal said with a smirk. "Let me dig a little. I'll start with his social accounts, maybe some business records. You never know what people leave lying around." I nodded, feeling a flicker of hope for the first time all day. "If she wants to play this game," I said, "we'll play it better." Cal tapped the table. "Then let's find out who Vince really is." 2 days later, Cal called me with a voice that carried both triumph and disbelief. "You were right about Vince," he said. "The guy's a snake. I've been digging through some forums and social accounts. Turns out, Vince isn't just a smooth-talking coworker. He's a full-blown con artist." I was silent for a moment, gripping my phone. "What do you mean, con artist?" Cal lowered his voice like he was sharing classified intel. "I found 3 women in different states posting warnings about him. Same pattern every time. He sweet-talks them, gets them to invest in some fake business or crypto nonsense, and then drains their accounts before ghosting them." I felt my stomach drop. It was one thing to know Elena had been unfaithful, but it was another to realize she might be part of something criminal. "You think she's in on it?" I asked. "I don't know yet," Cal said, "but I wouldn't put it past her, especially if money's involved. You should check your bank statements." That night, I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop, combing through months of transactions. My pulse quickened as I spotted transfers I didn't remember approving, thousands siphoned out of our joint account, in increments that looked deliberate. The trail led to a couple of accounts with names I didn't recognize. I leaned back in my chair, my chest tightening. "She's been helping him," I muttered under my breath. Cal called again later, his tone urgent. "You need to see this," he said, sending me a link to a Reddit thread titled, "Beware of Vince Howard, Professional Scammer." The post was loaded with stories from women who described the exact same tactics: fake investments, emotional manipulation, stolen funds. As I scrolled, my heart sank when I saw a blurry photo of Vince at a bar, with Elena sitting right next to him, her hand on his arm. That was the moment the last thread of doubt snapped. This wasn't just an affair. This was fraud. And I'd been financing it without even realizing. I spent the next hour pulling together every piece of evidence I could find: bank statements, screenshots of Elena's texts, even timestamps from her GPS history. The more I uncovered, the angrier I became. She hadn't just betrayed me as a husband. She had turned me into a mark. By midnight, I called Cal again. "I'm done playing nice," I told him. "If she and Vince think they can ruin me, they're in for a surprise. I'm gonna burn this whole scheme down." Cal chuckled darkly. "Good. Let's make sure they never see it coming." For the first time in weeks, I felt a clear sense of purpose. It wasn't about saving my marriage anymore. It was about survival. And revenge. I spent the next 2 nights gathering everything: emails, bank records, and screenshots of the messages Elena thought she'd hidden. Every ugly detail went into a single folder on my laptop. Cal came by to help, bringing a flash drive and a 6-pack like we were gearing up for war. "People love drama," he said, scrolling through Vince's photos. "But they love the truth even more when you hit them with hard proof." By dawn, we had crafted a detailed expose, a timeline of Vince's scams, proof of the missing funds, and screenshots of Elena coordinating transfers that lined up with the withdrawals from our joint account. We posted it online under a simple title: "How I Found Out My Wife and Her Co-Worker Were Running a Scam." Within hours, it went viral. My phone buzzed nonstop as friends who had believed Elena's lies started messaging me, apologizing, asking if it was all true. People were sharing the post, leaving comments about Vince's past victims. A few even added their own stories. The tide turned faster than I expected. By evening, Elena was at my doorstep, pounding on the door. I didn't rush to answer. When I finally opened it, she stood there with fire in her eyes, her phone in hand. "Are you insane?" she hissed. "You aired our private life online. You're destroying both of us." "No, Elena," I said calmly. "You destroyed this when you started lying and stealing." "That's not what this is," she snapped, stepping closer. "You're twisting everything to make me look like a criminal. You think people are going to believe this garbage?" "They already do," I said, holding up my phone to show her the growing thread of victims identifying Vince and her. "You underestimated how many people you've hurt." She froze just for a moment as the screen reflected in her eyes. You don't know what you're talking about." "Then explain the wire transfers," I said, my tone like steel. "Explain why our savings account is almost empty, or why your name shows up on documents tied to Vince's phony investments." Her jaw clenched. "You wouldn't dare." "I already have," I cut in. And when I hand this over to the cops, they'll have everything they need to take both of you down." The color drained from her face. For the first time, she wasn't yelling. She was rattled. "You're bluffing," she said weakly. I stepped aside and gestured toward the street. "Try me, but you might want to call Vince first. Something tells me his scams are about to catch up to him." She didn't reply. She just turned on her heel and stormed off, muttering something under her breath. I watched her go, a strange calm settling over me. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I had control. 3 days after my expose went viral, Elena called me out of the blue. Her voice was sugar-coated, the kind of tone she used when she wanted something. "Mark, can we talk? Just the two of us. I think we both need to clear the air." I almost laughed. Clear the air? After everything? She sighed like she was the victim here. "Look, I made mistakes, but Vince is the real problem. I just want to meet and explain, okay? No yelling, no drama." "Please!" I could practically hear Vince feeding her lines in the background. Something about her timing screamed setup. "Fine," I said, keeping my tone neutral. "Where?" She gave me an address, Vince's upscale loft downtown. I hung up and immediately called Cal. "Sounds like a trap," he said, his voice sharp. "Exactly why I want you there," I replied. That evening, Cal parked 2 blocks away while I walked up to the building, with my phone recording in my jacket pocket. The loft door was already cracked open. I pushed it wide and stepped inside. Elena was sitting on the couch, legs crossed, dressed like she'd stepped out of a magazine shoot. "Mark," she said softly, forcing a smile, "I just wanted to tell you that Vince manipulated me. I never meant for things to go this far." "Is that right?" I said, scanning the room. I could feel the tension in the air. Then Vince walked in from the kitchen, holding a drink and smirking like he owned me. Look who finally showed up, the tough guy with the internet sob story. I kept my hands loose at my sides. "You two done running your scams?" Vince's smirk widened. "Careful, pal. You think your little post hurt me? That was just noise. I've been doing this for years. You don't scare me." "Maybe not," I said calmly, tapping my pocket where my phone was recording every word. "But you're doing a great job of scaring yourself." Elena glanced nervously at Vince. "Maybe we should just—" "Shut up," Vince snapped at her, his mask slipping. He stepped closer to me, his voice dropping to a threat. "You keep sticking your nose where it doesn't belong, and I promise you'll regret it." The tension broke when Cal pushed the door open and stepped inside. "Mark, you good?" Vince's eyes flickered. "Who the hell is this?" "My backup," I said. Vince turned red, his voice rising. "You think this is a game? You're finished, both of you." I let him rant, all of it being captured on my phone. When he finally stopped, I smiled just enough to unnerve him. "Thanks for making that so easy," I said. Vince froze. Elena's face went pale. They both realized too late that I wasn't just there to talk. I was gathering the final nail for their coffin. 2 days after the meeting at Vince's loft, I walked into the police station with Cal and a flash drive packed with evidence. We gave them everything: the bank transfers, screenshots, and the recording of Vince threatening me. The detective barely blinked as she scrolled through the files. "You've built a solid case," she said, looking up. "This is more than enough for a warrant." The next morning, I got the call. "We're moving in," the detective said. Cal and I watched from across the street as a team of officers raided Vince's so-called office, which turned out to be a rented condo used for scams. They dragged him out in handcuffs, shouting and swearing as cameras flashed from the local news crew that had picked up the tip. An hour later, Elena was also detained. She tried to act shocked, claiming she had no idea Vince was doing anything illegal, but the paper trail told a different story. Her name was tied to multiple fake accounts and wire transfers. As they put her in the back of a cruiser, she spotted me watching. "This is your fault, Mark," she screamed. "You ruined my life." I didn't answer. I just stood there, feeling a strange mix of relief and sadness. Weeks later, in court, everything came out. Vince's history of fraud. Elena's involvement in laundering money through our joint accounts. I sat on the witness stand, answering every question with the calmness of someone who had nothing left to lose. Vince looked smug even as the verdict came down, but the judge didn't buy his act. He was sentenced to over a decade behind bars. Elena wasn't as lucky as she'd hoped either. Her role in the scheme earned her probation, fines, and public disgrace. When it was over, I stepped out of the courthouse into the cool afternoon air. Cal was waiting for me near the steps, a cup of coffee in hand. "You did it," he said with a grin. I let out a slow breath, feeling the weight of the past months finally lift. "We did it," I corrected him. For the first time in a long while, I felt free. Elena's betrayal, Vince's arrogance. It was all behind me now. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew this much. I wasn't going to be anyone's victim again. A few weeks after the trial, life finally started to feel normal again. I was back on the construction site, working long days, letting the noise of hammers and saws drown out everything that had happened. The nights were quiet too, just me, a cold beer, and the hum of the fridge. But normal never lasts. One evening, as I was locking up the house, my phone rang from an unknown number. I almost let it go to voicemail, but something made me answer. A low male voice hissed, "You think Vince was the only one? You think this is over? He has people and they're coming for you." I froze. "Who is this?" The line went dead. I called Cal right away. "We've got a problem," I said, explaining the call. Cal sighed heavily. "Figures. Guys like Vince don't work alone. We need to dig deeper, find out who else is involved before they decide to make good on that threat." Over the next week, Cal started pulling threads. He found a few of Vince's old contacts, shady names linked to fake investment firms and shell companies. It wasn't just Vince running scams, it was a network, and they were still active. Then Lisa reached out. I'd never met her before, but she left a comment on my exposé saying Vince had taken her for nearly $30,000. When I called her, she sounded worn down, but determined. "He ruined my life," she said. "I have records, emails, receipts, all of it. If you're going after his crew, I want to help." That night, Cal, Lisa, and I sat around my kitchen table with laptops, piecing together the puzzle. Lisa had detailed records of the fake accounts Vince used. I compared them to the bank statements I'd pulled from my own accounts, and sure enough, some of the same names appeared. "Look at this," Cal said, spinning his laptop around. "These guys aren't just scamming women. They're laundering money through a network of fronts. Vince was just one cog in a much bigger machine." I felt my jaw tighten as I scrolled through the files. There was one name that stood out, an alias tied to the same account where Elena's transfers had gone. Whoever it was, they weren't finished. The logs showed recent activity. "Mark," Cal said, his voice serious, "you're still on their radar. These people don't let go of loose ends." I nodded, feeling that old fire rise again. "Then we don't wait for them to come to me. We take this to the next level." Lisa looked between us, her eyes steady. "If you're serious, I'm in. They can't keep getting away with this." I met Cal's gaze and saw the same resolve I felt. "Then let's finish what Vince started," I said. "We end this network before they bury someone else." 2 weeks after the threat call, Cal and I were ready. We'd traced Vince's network to a grimy warehouse on the edge of town, a place that looked abandoned but hummed with late-night activity. With Lisa's help, we'd pieced together enough evidence to know this was where the syndicate ran its operation, laundering money and planning their next scams. "Once we're in, we record everything," Cal said as we sat in his truck, parked a block away. "If they catch on, we stream it live. No chance they can bury the footage." I nodded, slipping the phone into my jacket pocket. "If we don't make it out, this footage nails them." We approached the warehouse through a side entrance Lisa had tipped us off about. Inside, the place was stacked with shipping crates, laptops on folding tables, and men hunched over screens. It wasn't long before one of them spotted us. "Who the hell are you?" the man barked. "I'm the guy you threatened," I said, pulling out my phone. "And now the whole world's going to see what you're running here." Chaos erupted. 2 men came charging at us, but Cal stepped forward, swinging a crowbar he'd brought. The first guy dropped after one hit to the shoulder. The second backed off when he realized we weren't bluffing. I kept recording, narrating as I moved through the warehouse, capturing ledgers, stacks of fake IDs, and duffel bags of cash. My live stream counter ticked up. Dozens, then hundreds of viewers. Someone in the comments tagged local news. "You think this will save you?" One of the ringleaders snarled, stepping out from the shadows. He was bigger than Vince, scarred, and clearly not used to being challenged. "Turn that camera off, or I'll make sure you disappear." "Go ahead," I said, holding the phone higher. "Everyone's watching. Try me." He froze, realizing the camera was live. "You're dead, you hear me? Dead!" Cal shoved him back with the crowbar. "The only one going down is you." We held our ground, the live stream rolling until sirens wailed outside. Someone had tipped off the police, maybe from the feed. Officers stormed in, weapons drawn, ordering everyone to the ground. The ringleader and his crew were cuffed within minutes. Outside, I watched as the cops loaded the criminals into their vans. My hands were shaking, but for the first time, it wasn't from fear. It was from the adrenaline of winning. "You good?" Cal asked, clapping my shoulder. "Better than I've been in a long time," I said, looking back at the warehouse. "This ends here." As we walked toward the rising sun, I realized something. Betrayal had cost me everything I thought I had, but it had also given me something I didn't know I needed: a clean slate, a chance to rebuild. For the first time in months, I felt free.